So thank you, Pierre, for inviting for the wrap-up. I would say that what I heard in this last hour and a half is already a wrap-up from the workshops. So, work done. Now that we are reaching the end of this very productive 1.5 days, very constructive with a lot of very interesting discussions and presentations, I would say that just looking at the number of participants, 500 registered and possibly not so many missing, we could see clearly how the excitement and the interest and the acknowledgement for IMI is being perceived by the community. And when looking at all the participants, we could say community that comes from general community to research, which includes academics, different layers of industry, regulators, and of course, patients. So, having said that, maybe the first wrap-up from the last part has been done, I would like to focus a little bit and just to make some considerations about questions that I perceive as having been important. They are recurrent somehow, but the responses might be evolving a long time. And I would say that two important questions that I captured are always the same. How should we engage in IMI, and why should I engage in IMI? The first one, I think that the how question in IMI and research, of course, associated. The why question, I guess that it has been very well responded for during the full sessions. So we had the presentations on the topics on the call 10. We had specific presentations by colleagues, and namely Magali was going very strict, explaining how you should think about the consortium and making a consortium, how you should think about going as a, let's say, coordinator or joining, which is the partner search tools that you could get, and even how to get to the IMI office and ask for help if you want to join a consortium. Well, this is, I would say, not so difficult, but I would say the next one is the why question. And the why question, that's the one that I feel that is really a moving target now. First of all, well, I guess that we have several layers of reasoning behind the IMI programs. The first response for the why should you engage, should I engage in IMI-driven research, I think that what we have heard, and when we look at IMI programs, it speaks by itself. IMI is about joint research programs with, let's say, joint groups that hopefully will translate in improved medicines development and accelerating patient access to the deliveries and somehow accelerated and appropriate society access to the deliveries also. So it should result and better faster medicines given safely through a more personalized way that we are being driven. And somehow I would say that when putting together this consortium that merges academia with research, with regulators, academia with industry, with regulators, and now with patients also, I would say that it's like a tool to filter the nice plus need to know deliveries that are normally generated in academia into the need to know deliveries that will be identified somehow and driven with the help of industry also. And that's, I guess, one of the unique and beauties of IMI that might justify how the success of the projects, how much deliveries, and how the, let's say, the transformative process that Pierre was highlighting so well is happening so fast. So it's not so long ago, we are 16 years more or less, when IMI has been started. And when IMI has been issued, it has been issued on the basis of identified bottlenecks for drug development. Why are medicines failing so much? And what had been identified? It was, well, preclinical tools are not so predictive. Well, we don't know so much about the diseases. We don't know the targets. We know less about the pharmacology. So all these needs to be somehow put into the context, and that's what happened. And the first projects that have been issued by IMI, they were really addressing these aspects together with training that we had discussed today a lot, whether it would continue to be needed or not. So, what has been delivered and what starts being delivered now that the first projects are or have been finalized, I would say it starts being quite informative and responsive to the why question, the first one, why should you engage? Indeed, or should we engage? Indeed, we heard yesterday about, for instance, European Lead Factory. European Lead Factory is producing this huge library of compounds. At the same time, another project, Open Facts, is creating a catalog of targets together with cell cascades. So you can or get the target and you want the molecule and you go to European Lead Factory, or you can do the other way around. And then you select your molecules, and then you need to know which ones you should select for a certain purpose. And of course, you need to think about toxicity. And when you think about toxicity, you have these tools that have been generated for in silico predictions through another project that is now finalizing, which is ETOX. So you have the molecule, you have the target, you have the prediction in silico for the first thinking about toxicity. Then you might want to somehow confirm that anticipated toxicity, and you want better predictive tools, and you have now STEM Bank, which is about standardizing tools based on human cells coming from iPS and producing them in the technology, standardized technology that will allow more diverse and at the same time more harmonized information to be delivered. And these cells, which are becoming available, the project is becoming highly successful, will be used also either for target identification, and they are already in several diseases, when with cells coming from patients, they are used and being developed also for toxicity testing, and hopefully they will be the basis for the microphysiological systems, which are now being prepared and starting to be discussed also. And they will be banked through another project, which is IBISC. So I would say that just thinking and putting into the context all these, let's say, few projects that I have referred, we can feel clearly that there is a design for the drug development and concepts which is modulated and conducted by IMI. But IMI was not only about basic research, and even IMI-1 had already started to address several aspects of diseases and research-related disease-based research with target identifications based on WHO priorities. And Pierre was yesterday referring, and we had the presentations by UBioPred and how the novel taxonomies for severe asthma is being established and how it will impact in the clinical research. But we could talk about other platforms being created which are allowing stratification for metabolic diseases, like the platform for diabetes, or anticipation of neurodegenerative diseases like the Alzheimer or metabolic diseases through the so-called European Medicines Information Framework project, or even the stratification of diseases also through the target characterization and attributes and genomic characterization based on cells coming from STEM Bank already, for instance, for the Alzheimer, but also for the autism, but also for the Parkinson's disease. So really, even IMI-1, some of these projects are still ongoing. It's showing quite clearly how the basic research is being put and used and can be used together with the disease focused research, just to allow a better progress, and at the same time highlighting the need to expand all this information into new models for the clinical development. And that's where somehow the IMI2 is expanding the IMI1 strategies, and we start having all these discussions about digital data, big data banking, and about patient inclusion, about training, about the incorporation also of the thinking on the potential hurdles related to patient access and how to resolve them through programs which are projects which are already ongoing and proposing strategies. And this is ongoing IMI2. So I would say that when we put all this into context, do I need to guess why it is so interesting to join IMI and engage in IMI research? I think it's self-responsive. That's it. However, it's clear that we are 500 here, more or less. Of course, that most will not be possibly successful on the consortium that will be forming. And I know this is frustrating. I hear this all the time. Well, just one is given, and that's really frustrating. But anyway, the point is that one consortium is being generated and is being sponsored by the IMI, but that consortium somehow is sponsored to generate all this data, all these platforms of knowledge, which will become available to everybody. Which means that even if I am not in the winning consortium, I will have access to a lot of knowledge which is being generated. And I would say this is a fantastic way to be engaged, because if I have applied as a consortium, means that I have the skills also to be working on this field, which means that I can be using what is being generated together, what I am being generating also, and therefore, if it's not a sponsored direct contribution, it might be indirect contribution, but it will still be there. And somehow, I would say that this might be enormously important, because the objective of IMI by the end of the day is to generate new strategies, transformative strategies for drug development, and of course, this is not only for 24 consortia or 70 consortia that we have now, but it should be for everybody in general. So this knowledge needs to be used by everybody. So I would say that IMI by itself, through all the data and all the information which is being generated and the achievements, is making itself as a knowledge platform, which obviously needs to be sustained, but has to be used for the success of drug development. And this leads us to the third stage. I would say we had IMI 1, which was the generation, the kickoff of all this information, the basic solutions. Then we had the expansion through society somehow also, and addressing all the access problems. And now we will need, and everybody's talking about that, sustainability and implementation. And implementation, you can only implement when you have the tools. So big challenge now, I would say, would be also to sustain, to keep the tools alive and well available, and therefore to create the new strategies for their implementation. And therefore, yes, the transformation will happen. And this, I guess, of course, will not be just like this, one day through the other. It is a progressive process, but I guess that it drives us nicely into the IMI 3 program that clearly generation, expansion, implementation. So IMI might be about implementation. So I guess that's what I read from all these discussions here today. For instance, the advanced therapy one was very interesting because all these aspects have been touched, from the preclinical research, risk-based approach, into the patient access, HTAs. Everything was there, all components, in one brainstorm, in one thinking. So clearly, all these aspects are well in the mind of everybody, and IMI is helping to put this huge brainstorm together and will help to succeed in terms of the better developments. So, I finalize now. Thank you so much for your contributions. I think that it has been a great discussion and workshop. I see that 500 is more or less the double of the number of registered previously, so I guess that this shows how IMI is really becoming visible and important and interesting, and I look forward next steps and further discussions. Thank you.